The world shattered when Jake was 14. His mom's laughter silenced by cancer's cruel grip. 3 years later, at 17, he stood in the backyard of their small-town Ohio home, staring at the stars, wondering if she could still see him. Then he heard Ida's faint click from the trees, like a camera shutter snapping his secrets. Jake's heart raced. He was used to hiding his identity, his feelings, his truth. Growing up gay in a town where different meant wrong, he'd learned to keep his head down. But tonight, something felt off. The air was thick with suspicion, and the shadows seemed to watch him. His dad, Tom, had remarried a year ago to Linda, a woman with a smile too sharp and eyes too cold. Jake never trusted her, but he couldn't pinpoint why until now. He glanced at the house, where warm light spilled from the kitchen window. Linda was inside, probably sipping her wine, plotting her next move. Jake's gut twisted. He'd caught her whispering on the phone last week, her voice low and venomous, mentioning his name. What was she hiding? And why did he feel like prey in his own home? Jake's only solace was Ethan, the 28-year-old librarian who'd moved to town 6 months ago. Ethan was everything Jake was: confident, openly gay, and unafraid. They'd met at the library when Jake was researching for a school project, and Ethan's easy smile had cracked something open in Jake's guarded heart. Their friendship had grown into something more, something secret, something that made Jake's chest ache with hope and fear. Tonight, Ethan was coming over, a rare visit under the guise of tutoring. Jake's dad didn't suspect anything, but Linda's watchful eyes missed nothing. As Jake waited, he scanned the yard again, his gaze landing on the oak tree by the fence. That clicked heard it before, hadn't he? His skin prickled. Someone was watching. The back door creaked open, and Ethan stepped out, his dark hair catching the fading light. "You okay, Jake?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. Jake wanted to tell him everything about the click, the suspicion, the fear that Linda was onto them. But the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he nodded, forcing a smile. They sat on the bench, their shoulders brushing, a quiet rebellion against the world. Ethan talked about a book he'd read, but Jake barely listened, his mind on the shadows. He didn't know it yet, but that hidden camera in the tree was about to unravel everything: his love, his family, his life. The next morning, Jake woke to a scream. His dad's voice, raw with fury, echoed from the living room. Jake stumbled downstairs, heart pounding, to find Tom clutching a tablet, his face pale. Linda stood beside him, her expression a mask of concern, but her eyes gleamed with something darker. "What's going on?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. Tom turned the tablet toward him. The screen showed grainy footage: Jake and Ethan in the backyard last night, their hands touching, their laughter soft. Jake's stomach dropped. Where did this come from? He demanded, though he already knew. Linda's voice was smooth as ice. "I found it on the porch this morning. Someone left it for us." "Jake, how could you keep this from your father?" Jake's world tilted. He'd never come out to his dad, not because he didn't want to, but because he was terrified of losing the only parent he had left. Tom's face was unreadable, a mix of shock and betrayal. "Is this true, Jake?" he asked quietly. "Are you?" The word hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Jake's throat tightened, but he nodded. "Yeah, Dad. I'm gay." Silence crashed over the room. Linda's lips curved slightly, a predator scenting blood. Tom set the tablet down, his hands shaking. "We need to talk," he said, but his voice was distant, like he was already pulling away. Jake's eyes burned with unshed tears. He wanted to scream that this wasn't his fault, that Linda had orchestrated this. But he had no proof. Not yet. He glanced at the tablet. The frozen image of him and Ethan. And a spark of defiance ignited. Whoever set up that camera thought they'd break him. They were wrong. He excused himself, slipping upstairs to his room, where he grabbed his phone and texted Ethan. They know. Linda's behind it. I need you. Ethan's reply was instant. I'm coming over. Stay strong. As Jake waited, he replayed the past year in his mind. Linda had always been too perfect, too eager to play the loving stepmom, too quick to ask about his friends, his plans, his life. He'd caught her rifling through his desk once, claiming she was organizing. Now it made sense. She'd been looking for leverage, and she'd found it. When Ethan arrived, they met in Jake's room. The door closed. Ethan's presence was a lifeline, his steady gaze anchoring Jake's chaos. We'll figure this out, Ethan said, his voice firm. If Linda's behind this, there's proof somewhere. People like her always slip up. Jake nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. What if his dad believed Linda over him? What if this broke their family for good? He thought of his mom, her warm hugs, her fierce love. She'd always told him to be brave, to be himself. He clung to that now, even as fear clawed at his chest. They spent the afternoon strategizing. Ethan suggested checking the backyard for the camera, but Jake hesitated. If Linda was watching, they couldn't tip her off. Instead, they decided to dig into her past. Ethan had a friend, Mia, a tech-savvy barista who'd grown up in town and knew everyone's secrets. If anyone could uncover dirt on Linda, it was her. By evening, Jake's dad called him downstairs. Tom sat at the kitchen table, looking older than his 45 years. Linda was nowhere in sight. Jake, Tom said, his voice heavy. I don't understand this. But you're my son. I love you. We'll figure it out. Jake's heart lifted, but the relief was short-lived. Linda appeared, her smile saccharine. Tom, don't you think we should set some boundaries? For Jake's sake. Her words were laced with concern, but Jake saw the manipulation. She was planting seeds, turning his dad against him. That night, Jake lay awake, the weight of the day pressing down. He thought of Ethan, of the camera, of Linda's smug face. This wasn't just about him being gay, it was about control, about Linda's need to dominate their family. He wouldn't let her win. The next day, Jake and Ethan met Mia at the local coffee shop. She was 25, with a nose ring and a laptop covered in stickers. Linda's bad news, Mia said, her fingers flying over the keys. I've heard rumors she's got a history of stirring up trouble. Give me a day, and I'll find something. Jake felt a flicker of hope. If Mia could uncover Linda's secrets, maybe he could turn the tables. But time was running out. Linda was already tightening her grip, suggesting counseling for Jake, whispering to Tom about protecting the family. Jake knew what she really wanted, him gone. As they left the coffee shop, Ethan grabbed Jake's hand, squeezing it tightly. We're in this together, he said. Jake nodded, his resolve hardening. He'd spent years hiding who he was. No more. Linda thought she'd exposed him, but she'd only lit a fire. He was ready to fight for his truth, for his love, for his family. The morning sun barely pierced the gray Ohio sky as Jake and Ethan huddled in the library, their heads bent over Mia's laptop. Mia's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up fragments of Linda's past social media posts, old news articles, anything that might reveal her motives. Jake's stomach churned with a mix of hope and dread. Every click felt like a step closer to answers. Or a trap. Mia leaned back, her eyes narrowing. Got something, she said, pointing to an article from a small-town paper in Indiana, dated 5 years ago. It described a scandal involving a woman named Linda Carter, who'd been accused of blackmailing a coworker. The charges were dropped, but the details were damning: hidden cameras, secret recordings, a pattern of manipulation. "Sounds like our Linda," Mia said, her voice grim. Jake's pulse quickened. The article didn't prove Linda had planted the camera in their backyard, but it was a start. He glanced at Ethan, whose jaw was tight. "She's done this before," Ethan said. "We need to find that camera. It's physical evidence." They decided to search the backyard that evening, when Linda was at her book club and Tom was at work. Jake's dad had been distant since the tablet incident, his love for Jake warring with confusion. Jake hated the wedge Linda was driving between them, but he couldn't confront her without proof. Not yet. At dusk, Jake and Ethan crept into the backyard, flashlights in hand. The oak tree loomed, its branches casting eerie shadows. Jake's heart pounded as he scanned the foliage, his fingers brushing against rough bark. Ethan climbed onto a low branch, his flashlight sweeping the canopy. "There," he whispered, pointing to a small black device nestled between leaves, its lens glinting like a snake's eye. Jake's breath caught. It was real. The camera wasn't just a paranoid fear, it was Linda's weapon. Ethan carefully dislodged it, wrapping it in a cloth to avoid fingerprints. "We need to see what's on this," he said, his voice low but fierce. "If it's got footage, it might show who planted it." They retreated to Ethan's apartment, a small studio above the library. Ethan plugged the camera into his laptop, but the files were encrypted. "Mia can crack this," he said, texting her. Jake nodded, but his mind was elsewhere in his dad, on the pain in Tom's eyes when he'd seen the footage. Jake had always planned to come out on his own terms. Not like this. Linda had stolen that from him. Mia arrived an hour later, her laptop already humming. "This is high-end stuff," she said, frowning at the camera. "Not your average nanny cam. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing." After 30 tense minutes, she bypassed the encryption, revealing a folder of video files. Jake's hands shook as he clicked the first one. The footage showed the backyard, timestamped from 2 weeks ago. Jake and Ethan appeared, talking, laughing, their hands brushing. Jake's chest ached at the memory those stolen moments had felt like freedom. But then the camera panned, catching Linda's face as she adjusted its position. Her smirk was unmistakable. "That's it," Jake whispered, fury rising. "She did this." Ethan's hand found his, grounding him. Mia kept digging, pulling up more files, some showing Jake alone, others capturing private conversations. Linda had been watching him for weeks, maybe months. "Why?" Jake asked, his voice breaking. "What does she gain from this?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "Control. She wants your dad to see you as a problem, someone he needs to fix. If she can push you out, she gets him all to herself." Mia nodded. "Classic manipulator. But we've got her now. This footage, plus that article's enough to raise questions." Jake wasn't so sure. His dad loved Linda, trusted her. Would he believe Jake over her? Especially after the bombshell of Jake's coming out. Doubt gnawed at him, but Ethan's steady presence kept him focused. "We need a plan," Ethan said. "We show your dad the camera, the footage, everything. But we have to be smart about it." They spent the night strategizing. Mia suggested confronting Linda in front of Tom, using the evidence to catch her off guard. Jake agreed, but fear clung to him. What if his dad took Linda's side? What if this broke their family beyond repair? The next day, Jake returned home, the camera hidden in his backpack. Linda was in the kitchen, humming as she chopped vegetables. The picture of domestic bliss. Jake's skin crawled. "Hey, Linda, he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. Can we talk? With Dad? Her eyes flicked to him, sharp and assessing. Of course. Sweetie, she said, her smile too sweet. What's on your mind? Jake's heart raced, but he held her gaze. It's about the backyard. And what you've been hiding. Linda's smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. Jake knew he'd struck a nerve. He texted Ethan and Mia to come over, his fingers trembling. This was a moment of truth. He thought of his mom, her voice echoing in his mind. Be brave. Jake. He would be. For her. For himself. For Ethan. When Tom got home, Jake led him to the living room, where Ethan and Mia waited. Linda followed, her composure slipping. Jake set the camera on the coffee table, its lens staring at her like an accusation. Dad, he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside. We need to talk about this. Tom stared at the camera on the coffee table, his brow furrowing. The living room felt smaller, the air thick with tension. Jake's heart pounded as he watched his dad's face, searching for a flicker of understanding. Linda stood by the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression a careful blend of confusion and concern. Ethan and Mia flanked Jake, their presence a quiet strength. What is this? Jake? Tom asked, his voice low, wary. He picked up the camera, turning it over in his hands like it might bite. Jake took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down. It's from the backyard. It's been recording Muse for weeks. And Linda put it there. Linda's laugh was sharp, cutting through the room. That's absurd. Jake, why would I do something like that? Her eyes darted to Tom, pleading. Honey, you know I'd never. Stop, Jake said, his voice louder than he'd intended. He pulled out Ethan's laptop, already open to the footage. Just watch. He played the clip, the one showing Linda adjusting the camera, her smirk clear as day. Tom's face went pale, his jaw tightening. The video looped to Jake and Ethan in the backyard, their hands brushing, their voices soft. Jake braced himself, expecting his dad's shock to turn to anger. But Tom just stared, silent. Linda stepped forward, her voice rising. This is manipulated. Someone's trying to frame me. Tom, you can't believe this. Ethan spoke up, calm but firm. We found an article. Tom. From Indiana. 5 years ago. Linda was involved in a blackmail scheme using hidden cameras. It's her pattern. Mia slid a printed copy of the article across the table. Tom's eyes scanned it, his hands trembling. Jake watched him, his chest tight. This was the moment he'd feared his dad choosing between him and Linda. He wanted to believe Tom's love for him would win, but doubt lingered like a shadow. Linda, Tom said finally, his voice hoarse. Is this true? Her face crumpled, but only for a moment. Then she straightened, her eyes flashing. You're going to believe them over me. Your son, who's been sneaking around behind your back. And his friend. She spat the word like poison. Jake's face burned, but he held his ground. I wasn't sneaking. Linda. I was scared. Scared you'd do exactly what you're doing now, twist everything to hurt me. Tom's head snapped up, his eyes meeting Jake's. For the first time since the tablet incident, Jake saw something familiar as Dad's love, raw and unguarded. Jake, Tom said, I didn't know you felt like that. Why didn't you tell me? Jake's throat tightened. I wanted to. Dad. But after Mom, I didn't want to lose you too. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. Linda's composure cracked, her hands clenching. This is ridiculous. She snapped. You're all ganging up on me. Tom, you know I've only tried to help this family. Help. Jake shot back, his voice shaking with anger. You spied on me. You wanted to control me. To push me out. Why? Linda, what did I ever do to you? Tom stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Enough, he said, his voice sharp. He turned to Linda, his eyes hard. I need the truth. Now. Linda's mask slipped, her lips trembling. I was protecting you. Tom. Jake's choices, his lifestyle could ruin your reputation. I thought if you saw. Saw what? Tom interrupted, his voice rising. My son being happy. My son being himself. He shook his head, disgust flickering across his face. You thought you could manipulate me into turning against him. Jake's heart swelled, tears stinging his eyes. His dad was choosing him. But Linda wasn't done. She stepped closer to Tom, her voice low and desperate. You don't understand. People in this town, they talk. I was trying to protect our family. Tom's face hardened. This family is me and Jake. You don't get to decide who he is. Linda's eyes widened, realizing she'd lost her grip. She turned to Jake, her gaze venomous. You think you've won. This isn't over. She stormed out, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Tom sank back into his chair, rubbing his temples. Jake hesitated, then sat beside him. Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was just scared. Tom reached out, squeezing Jake's shoulder. I'm the one who's sorry. Kid, I should have seen what she was doing. I should have been there for you. Ethan and Mia exchanged a glance, quietly slipping out to give them space. Jake felt a weight lift, but the fight wasn't over. Linda's parting words echoed in his mind. She wasn't the type to back down. Over the next few days, Jake and Tom talked more than they had in years. Tom admitted he didn't fully understand Jake's identity, but he wanted to learn. They watched old home videos of Jake's mom, laughing and crying together, rebuilding their bond. Ethan was there too, a steady presence, helping Jake navigate the aftermath. But Linda's absence was ominous. She'd moved out, staying with a friend in town. But Jake knew she was plotting. Mia kept digging, uncovering more about Linda's past shady business deals, broken relationships, a trail of manipulation. Jake realized she wasn't just a threat to him. She was dangerous. One night, Jake found a note slipped under his bedroom door. In Linda's neat handwriting, it read, "You can't hide forever." His blood ran cold. He showed it to Ethan, who insisted they go to the police. But Jake hesitated. What if they didn't believe him? What if Linda spun another lie? Ethan pulled him close, his voice fierce. She doesn't get to win. Jake, we'll fight this together. Jake nodded, drawing strength from Ethan's certainty. He thought of his mom, her courage, her love. He wouldn't let Linda take that from him. Tomorrow, they'd go to the police. Tomorrow, they'd end this. The police station smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, a stark contrast to the warm Ohio morning outside. Jake sat beside Ethan, his hands clenched in his lap, the note from Linda burning a hole in his pocket. Tom sat on his other side, his face etched with worry but resolute. They'd come to file a report, to turn the tables on Linda once and for all. The officer, a middle-aged woman named Detective Harris, listened as Jake recounted everything: the camera, the footage, Linda's history, the threatening note. He handed over the camera and the printed article, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. Ethan's hand rested lightly on his knee, a silent anchor. Harris studied the evidence, her expression unreadable. This is serious, she said finally. The camera alone is a violation of privacy. The note could be considered a threat. We'll look into her background. But we need to question her. Do you know where she's staying? Jake nodded, giving the address of Linda's friend. Tom added, she's manipulative. Be careful, she'll try to twist this. Harris nodded, jotting down notes. We'll handle it. In the meantime, I suggest you secure your home. Change the locks. Check for other devices. We'll follow up soon. As they left the station, Jake felt a mix of relief and unease. The police were involved, but Linda was slippery. What if she slipped through their fingers? Ethan sensed his worry, pulling him aside. We're doing the right thing, he said, his brown eyes steady. She can't hide forever. Back home, Jake and Tom combed the house for more cameras, finding nothing but dust and memories. The absence of evidence was almost worse. It meant Linda was careful, calculated. Tom hired a locksmith that afternoon, and by evening, new deadbolts gleamed on every door. Jake felt safer, but not safe. That night, Ethan stayed over, sleeping on the couch at Tom's insistence. Jake lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He thought of his mom, how she'd always known when he was scared, how she'd sing him to sleep. He wished she were here now, guiding him through this storm. The next morning, Mia called with news. She'd hacked into an old email account linked to Linda, uncovering messages that hinted at her motives. She's obsessed with control, Mia said over the phone. There's an email from a year ago, before she married your dad. She was researching you. Jake, your school, your friends, everything. Jake's stomach twisted. Why me? She saw you as a threat, Mia said. You're Tom's whole world. She wanted to be the center of it. Ethan, listening on speaker, clenched his fists. She's sick. We need to show this to Harris. They met Mia at the coffee shop, where she handed over printed emails. One stood out, a message to an unknown contact. The kid's hiding something. I'll find it and use it. Jake's blood ran cold. Linda had been planning this from the start, before she'd even moved in. They took the emails to Detective Harris, who added them to the case file. This strengthens our case, she said. We're bringing her in for questioning tomorrow. But tomorrow came with a shock. Harris called to say Linda had vanished. Her friend claimed she'd left in the middle of the night, leaving no trace. Jake's heart sank. Linda was out there, a shadow waiting to strike. Tom's face was grim as he hung up the phone. We're not letting her scare us, he said. This is our home. Jake nodded, but fear gnawed at him. He and Ethan spent the day fortifying the house, checking windows, setting up motion sensor lights. Tom reached out to old friends, asking them to keep an eye out for Linda. The town rallied around them, their support a small comfort against the growing dread. That evening, Jake and Ethan sat in the backyard, the same bench where it all began. The stars were bright, but the oak tree felt ominous now, its branches heavy with secrets. Ethan took Jake's hand, his voice soft. You're stronger than you know, Jake. We'll get through this. Jake leaned into him, drawing courage from his warmth. I just want it to be over, he whispered. I want to be me without fear. Ethan's eyes softened. You will be. I promise. But the promise felt fragile when Jake woke to a crash at midnight. He bolted upright, heart racing, and crept downstairs. Tom was already there, gripping a baseball bat, his eyes wide. Ethan joined them, phone in hand, ready to call 911. The living room window was shattered, a brick lying among the glass. Taped to it was another note. You'll regret this. Jake's knees buckled, but Ethan caught him, his voice fierce. She's desperate. That means she's slipping. Tom called the police, who arrived within minutes. Harris examined the brick, her face grim. This is escalation. We're putting out an alert for her. Stay vigilant. As the police left, Jake clung to Ethan, his fear mingling with resolve. Linda was unraveling, but so was he. He wouldn't let her break him. He thought of his mom, her strength, her love. He'd fight for that. For his dad. For Ethan. For himself. The days after the brick incident were a blur of tension and waiting. Jake barely slept, jumping at every creak in the house. Tom installed a security system, its blinking lights a constant reminder of the threat lingering beyond their walls. Ethan stayed close, his presence a lifeline, but even his warmth couldn't fully ease Jake's fear. Detective Harris called with updates, but Linda remained a ghost. Her friend's house was empty, her car gone. The police traced her phone to a nearby town, but the signal died hours later. She's smart, Harris admitted, but she's not invisible. We'll find her. Jake wasn't so sure. Linda's notes, her cameras, her calculated cruelty, they showed a mind that planned every move. He felt like a pawn in her game, always one step behind. But he wasn't alone anymore. Tom was different now, more present. His love for Jake a shield against the chaos. And Ethan was his rock, his courage, his hope. One afternoon, Mia showed up with a new lead. She'd found a burner phone number linked to Linda's emails, used to contact a private investigator in Cleveland. She was digging into your dad's finances, Mia said, her voice tight. I think she's after more than just control. She wants money. Jake's blood ran cold. Tom had inherited a modest sum from Jake's mom, enough to keep them comfortable. Was that Linda's endgame? To drive a wedge between them, push Jake out, and claim it all? The thought made him sick, but it also fueled his resolve. She wouldn't win. Ethan suggested they set a trap. If she's watching, we can use that against her, he said. Leak something, make her think she's got an opening. Jake hesitated, but Tom agreed. She's desperate, Tom said. Desperate people make mistakes. They devised a plan with Harris's help. Jake would post on social media a vague message about leaving town for a few days, hinting at a family trip. The police would watch the house, ready to catch Linda if she took the bait. Jake's hands shook as he typed the post, his words carefully crafted to sound naive. Vulnerable. Heading out with Dad and Ethan for a break. Need some time away. He hit send, his heart in his throat. That night, the house was quiet, the security system armed. Jake, Tom, and Ethan stayed up, pretending to pack for their trip. The police were stationed nearby, hidden in an unmarked van. Every shadow outside felt like Linda, every noise a threat. Jake clung to Ethan's hand, his pulse racing. At 2 a.m., the security system BP'd motion sensor triggered in the backyard. Jake's breath caught as Harris's voice crackled through Tom's phone. We've got movement. Stay inside. Tom gripped the bat, his knuckles white. Ethan pulled Jake close, whispering, it's almost over. But Jake couldn't shake the dread. What if Linda was armed? What if she got away again? Minutes later, Harris called back. We've got her, she said. Her voice clipped. She was trying to plant another camera. Caught her red-handed. Jake's knees gave out, relief flooding him. Ethan held him up, his arms strong and steady. Tom set the bat down, his shoulders sagging. It's done, he said, his voice breaking. She can't hurt us anymore. They met Harris at the station, where Linda sat in an interrogation room, her face pale but defiant. Through the one-way glass, Jake watched her, his anger mingling with pity. She'd lost everything: her marriage, her schemes, her freedom. But she'd brought it on herself. Harris laid out the charges: invasion of privacy, stalking, attempted extortion. The emails, the cameras, the notes. It was enough to put Linda away for years. Jake felt no joy, only a hollow relief. He'd wanted answers, not revenge. Back home, Jake and Tom sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the past weeks settling between them. "I'm proud of you," Tom said, his voice thick. "Your mom would be too. You're stronger than I ever was." Jake's eyes stung. "I just wanted to keep us together, Dad." Tom pulled him into a hug, the kind Jake hadn't felt since he was a kid. "We are," Tom said. "Always." Ethan joined them, his smile soft but bright. "You did it, Jake. You faced her down." Jake shook his head. "We did it. All of us." The next day, life felt lighter, but not simple. The town buzzed with gossip, and Jake knew coming out would bring new challenges. But he wasn't alone. He had his dad, Ethan, Mia, and the memory of his mom's love. Linda's schemes had exposed his truth, but they'd also set him free. As the sun set, Jake and Ethan walked to the backyard, the oak tree no longer a threat. They sat on the bench, their hands entwined, the stars above them bright and unjudging. Jake leaned into Ethan, his heart full. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. With Linda behind bars, the house felt different, quieter, but not entirely at peace. Jake woke each morning expecting another note, another camera, another betrayal. The scars of her manipulation lingered, but so did the strength he'd found in fighting back. He wasn't the scared kid hiding in the shadows anymore. He was Jake, out and unafraid, even if the world wasn't always kind. School was the next battleground. Word of Jake's coming out had spread, carried by whispers and curious glances. Some classmates were supportive, offering shy smiles or quick nods. Others weren't so kind. A group of jocks cornered him in the hallway one day, their sneers sharp as knives. "So, you're the gay kid now," one of them taunted, his voice loud enough to draw a crowd. Jake's heart raced, but he stood tall, channeling Ethan's confidence. "Yeah," he said, his voice steady. "Got a problem with that." The jock blinked, caught off guard, and muttered something before slinking away. The crowd dispersed, but Jake felt their eyes on him, judging, weighing. He didn't care. He'd faced worse than their stares. Ethan was waiting for him after school, leaning against his car, his smile a beacon. "Heard you shut down some idiots today," he said, pulling Jake into a quick hug. "Proud of you." Jake grinned, the weight of the day lifting. "Just taking a page out of your book." They drove to the library, where Ethan worked, and spent the afternoon shelving books and stealing glances. It was mundane, perfect, a slice of normalcy Jake hadn't known he craved. But even in these quiet moments, he felt the town's pulse, some accepting, some hostile, all watching. Tom was changing too. He joined a local PFLAG group, determined to understand Jake's world. At first, Jake was embarrassed, picturing his dad fumbling through discussions about identity. But when Tom came home with a stack of books on LGBTQ+ history, Jake's heart swelled. "I want to get this right," Tom said, his voice earnest. "For you. For us." Jake hugged him, the kind of hug that said everything words couldn't. They were rebuilding, brick by brick, the family Linda had tried to tear apart. But the past wasn't done with them yet. Mia called one evening with a new discovery. "Linda's not done," she said, her voice tense. "She's got a lawyer, and they're pushing for a plea deal." claiming she was protecting the family from instability. Jake's stomach dropped. Instability. You mean me? Ethan, sitting beside him, squeezed his hand. She's grasping at straws. The evidence is airtight. Mia agreed. Harris says the case is solid. But Linda's lawyer is good. She might get a reduced sentence. The news hit Jake hard. He'd thought Linda's arrest was the end. But now she was fighting back, twisting the narrative. He pictured her in court, her crocodile tears convincing a judge she was the victim. The thought made him sick, but it also lit a fire. He wouldn't let her rewrite his story. With Ethan's encouragement, Jake started a blog, pouring his heart into words. He wrote about his mom, his coming out, Linda's betrayal, and the love that held him together. He didn't expect anyone to read it. But within days, comments flooded in. Kids like him, parents like Tom, strangers sharing their own stories. The support was overwhelming, a reminder that he wasn't alone. One post went viral, shared by a local LGBTQ+ group. It caught the eye of a journalist, who reached out for an interview. Jake hesitated, nervous about the spotlight. But Ethan and Tom urged him on. Your story matters, Tom said. It could help someone else. The interview was raw, emotional. Jake spoke about his fear, his love for Ethan, his fight against Linda's schemes. When it aired, the town's reaction was mixed. Some praised his courage. Others whispered judgment. But Jake felt lighter, like he'd claimed a piece of himself back. Meanwhile, Harris kept them updated on Linda's case. The plea deal fell through when new evidence surfaced: a second camera, hidden in the garage, with footage of Linda planting the first one. It was the nail in her coffin, proof of her intent. Jake felt a grim satisfaction. She'd thought she could control him, but she'd underestimated him. As summer approached, Jake and Ethan planned a trip to Columbus for Pride. Tom insisted on coming, his first time at such an event. Jake was nervous, picturing his dad out of place among rainbow flags and glitter. But Tom surprised him, wearing a proud dad shirt and cheering louder than anyone. Under the bright June sun, Jake marched with Ethan, their hands linked, their smiles wide. The crowd roared, a sea of color and acceptance. Jake thought of his mom, imagining her there, her laughter blending with the music. He felt her love in every step, in every heartbeat. Linda's trial loomed, but Jake wasn't afraid anymore. He'd faced her and won. He'd faced the town and stood tall. He'd faced himself and found peace. Whatever came next, he was ready. The courtroom was cold, its wooden benches hard under Jake's legs. He sat between Tom and Ethan, his hands clasped tightly. As Linda's trial began, she sat across the room, her face pale but composed, her lawyer whispering in her ear. Jake's stomach twisted, but he kept his eyes on her, refusing to look away. This was his moment to reclaim his story. The prosecutor laid out the case, presenting the cameras, the footage, the emails, the notes. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall against Linda, her schemes exposed under the harsh courtroom lights. Jake's blog had made waves, and the gallery was packed, some faces supportive, others curious, a few hostile. He felt their stares but focused on Ethan's hand in his, warm and steady. When Jake took the stand, his voice shook at first. He told the court about the camera, the fear it sparked, the betrayal of a woman he'd tried to trust. He spoke of his mom, her loss, and how Linda had exploited his vulnerability. His words grew stronger, fueled by the truth. She wanted to control me, he said, locking eyes with Linda. She wanted to erase who I am. But she failed. Linda's lawyer tried to twist the narrative, painting Jake as a troubled teen, his relationship with Ethan inappropriate. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the judge's expression remained stern. Tom testified next, his voice breaking as he described his love for Jake, his regret for not seeing Linda's true nature sooner. Ethan followed, calm and articulate, detailing how Linda's actions had endangered Jake's safety and peace. The trial stretched over days, each one draining but empowering. Jake felt the weight of his truth resonating, not just in the courtroom but in the community. His blog had sparked conversations, and letters poured in, kids sharing their fears, parents vowing to do better. Jake realized his story wasn't just his anymore. It was a beacon for others. On the final day, Linda took the stand. She played the victim, tears streaming as she claimed she'd only wanted to protect Tom's reputation. But her lies crumbled under cross-examination, the footage of her planting the camera undeniable. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict: stalking, invasion of privacy, attempted extortion. Linda's face crumpled as the judge sentenced her to 5 years. Jake exhaled, the tension draining from his body. Ethan squeezed his hand, whispering, "You did it." Tom pulled them both into a hug, his eyes wet. "I'm so proud of you, Jake." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Jake ignored them, walking with Ethan and Tom to the car. The air felt lighter, the Ohio sky brighter. For the first time in months, Jake felt free, not just from Linda, but from the fear that had chained him for so long. Back home, life began to settle. Jake graduated high school, his diploma a symbol of battles won. He and Ethan grew closer, their love a quiet strength. Tom started dating again, cautiously, but with a new openness. Thanks to Jake's courage. The town wasn't perfect, some still whispered. Others judged, but Jake didn't care. He'd found his people, his truth. One evening, Jake sat in the backyard, the oak tree now just a tree, its secrets gone. Ethan joined him, their shoulders touching. "What's next for you?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Jake smiled, looking at the stars. "College. Maybe. Somewhere I can be me. With you." Ethan laughed, kissing his forehead. "Sounds like a plan." Tom called them inside for dinner, his voice warm, familiar. As Jake stood, he felt his mom's presence, her love woven into every moment. Linda had tried to break him, but she'd only made him stronger. He was Jake, gay, loved, unbroken, and he was just getting started. Summer faded into fall, the Ohio air crisp with change. Jake stood in his bedroom, packing boxes for college. He'd chosen a small liberal arts school in Columbus, close enough to visit Tom and Ethan, far enough to start fresh. The room felt different now, less like a hiding place, more like a launch pad. His mom's photo sat on the dresser, her smile a quiet blessing. Downstairs, Tom was cooking, the smell of lasagna filling the house. Ethan was helping, their laughter drifting up the stairs. Jake paused, his heart full. This was his family, not perfect, but real, forged through pain and love. Linda's shadow was gone, her conviction a closed chapter. Jake's blog had grown, a platform for others to share their stories, and he'd found purpose in it. He carried a box downstairs, where Tom and Ethan were setting the table, ready for the big move. Tom asked, his eyes crinkling with pride. Jake nodded, grinning, ready as I'll ever be. Ethan pulled him into a hug, whispering, "You're gonna kill it." Jake believed him. He'd faced a stepmom's betrayal, a town's judgment, his own fears. College was just the next step. That night, they ate together, sharing stories of Jake's mom, their dreams for the future. Tom talked about a new job, a chance to rebuild. Ethan spoke of expanding the library's LGBTQ+ section, Inspired by Jake. Jake shared his plans to study journalism, to give voice to the voiceless. The table was a circle of hope, a testament to their resilience. After dinner, Jake and Ethan walked to the backyard, the stars bright above the oak tree. Jake thought of the camera, the fear it had sparked, and how it had led to this freedom. Love. Truth. He took Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwining. I used to think I'd always be scared, Jake said, his voice soft. But I'm not anymore. Ethan's eyes shone. You're the bravest person I know. They stood there, the world quiet around them, and Jake felt a peace he hadn't known since his mom died. Linda had tried to tear him down, but she'd only built him up. He was out. He was loved. He was whole. The future was his to write. As they walked back inside, Jake glanced at the stars one last time. He felt his mom's love, steady and eternal, guiding him forward. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living fully, fiercely, himself.